You know what you didn't need to do, guys? Put physics in the testicles of the horses in your stupid cowboy game. Welcome back to the Middle of Culture. I'm one of your hosts, Eden.
And I am your other host, Peter.
Peter, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. It is Friday afternoon for me, Friday evening for you. I
Getting
am
to,
just
yeah.
kind of kicking it here at home alone because Liz and Gareth are in Boise until Monday morning, and then we'll be in California until the following Monday morning. So I'm just hanging out here totally alone.
Is this for swimming shenanigans?
It is. Yep. Swim meet in Boise over the weekend and then a week-long swim meet in California.
All right. Well, there you go. I am also alone, but I am in lovely Providence, Rhode Island at a conference. So, dear listeners, the audio might be a little different than usual because I'm having to use kind of a an improvised recording setup. I'm not at home. So we're making it work though. I think it'll be fine.
Totally. Totally fine.
So Peter, what you been up to? What's been catching your attention lately?
I've got to be honest, not a whole lot. I've still been reading some of the history books that I picked up when we were in England, just enjoying kind of a low stakes series of lessons in history about silly things from the world and then the British monarchy. So still cranking away at that. Um, haven't really played many games other than I did go back on a whim and decide to try and fire up both Forza Horizon 4, which is the one in the UK, and
Uh-huh.
Forza Horizon 5, the one in Mexico. Played a little bit more of those, but not a ton. Um, Liz and I started watching Modern Family. We'd never really watched it. I don't know why in my head I had that it was going to be a little bit more sort of edgy and acerbic. It's fun. It's lighthearted. It's
It's a very
silly. It's
wholesome
funny.
show.
Yeah, very much so. And I don't know where this idea that it wasn't. I don't know where I got that idea. But so we've been enjoying that. Plenty of laugh out loud moments. We also started Community. We're still a little on the fence when it comes to Community. We're only maybe 4 or 5 episodes into the first season. We haven't decided to turn it off, but we sit down and we're like, what do you want to watch? And most of the time we're like, let's watch an episode of Modern Family. So,
That's fair. I think of those two, I definitely prefer Community, but different strokes for different folks, right?
well, and like I say, we're both fairly early into both of them. I will say Joe McHale's character really had us turned off after the first 1 or 2 episodes,
Yeah,
but we've seen enough progress in the next couple episodes that we're still like, okay, we can keep watching it. It's just we may watch 1 episode of Community and then maybe 2 episodes of Modern Family if we're going to sit down for the evening.
that's
But
fair.
checking out both of those. And then I'll just some music that I've been checking out,
Hit
the
me.
more recent releases, the last little bit. Nothing today. Interestingly, it's one of those Fridays where there really wasn't much to add, except, I mean, I guess I might as well mention 20th anniversary remaster release of Meshuggah's Catch 33,
Okay.
but more important, 30th anniversary remaster release of Destroy Erase Improve by Meshuggah, which every time I listen to Destroy Erase Improve and think about the fact that that album came out in 1996, it blows my freaking mind. I mean,
It feels so
Meshuggah,
prescient.
especially in 19 oh my gosh, in 1996, that album is so far ahead of its time. Literally, the only thing that would even give you a clue that it was from 96 is that the production is a little bit more thin. It doesn't sound as
Yeah,
robust as modern production,
yeah,
but that is literally the only thing. Like, I love to throw that album on for people and just be like, yo, this came out in 96. And
yeah.
you get, especially that first song. I mean, come on, Future Breed Machine. You get to that those two guitar solos, that the kind of the first slow spacey one, and then the second one during the middle of the breakdown where it's just the rapid, like, and people just look at you and you're like, yes, this is like alien music.
Yeah. You're like 7 strings and
Oh
polyrhythms.
yeah. Oh
And then you're
yeah.
like sometimes 8 strings, not on Destroy Erase Improve, but sometimes later on, 8 strings on the guitar.
Eight
And
strings.
where do you put the extra strings? Down low.
Always at the bottom. Always at the bottom. I don't
You
know. You know,
turn that
Meshuggah is
regular
one of
guitar
those.
into a bass guitar. What are you doing?
It's true. You do. And you know, here's the thing. Meshuggah, I think that, I mean, Meshuggah defined multiple genres of heavy metal,
Oh
like
yeah.
redefined them, I think, in
Oh yeah.
ways. And I think they're great. They're not a band that I can listen to in really long chunks.
Same.
I can take them little bits here and there, one album, maybe 2 albums back to back, and then I'm kind of like, okay, let's mix something else in there.
Yeah.
Because the music is sometimes atonal, it's very angular in nature, and it is demanding to listen to.
Yeah.
And because of that, sometimes it's not great like background music. But at the same time, every time I listen to something by Meshuggah, I'm like, oh man, there's nobody who sounds like Meshuggah. There are many bands who have tried to sound like Meshuggah, and nobody really sounds like Meshuggah.
No, every time I've ever heard anyone say these are inheriting the spirit of Meshuggah, I was like, no, they're not. And then I listen to it and I'm even more
No.
disappointed because no one ever has. No one does it like those freaks.
Nope. They don't. They don't. But 3 albums that came out last Friday that I've been enjoying and listening to. The British progressive metal band Hacken released an EP. It's their first album in a couple of years, and their first new music since guitarist Charlie Griffiths and the bassist Connor Green left. They left earlier this year. So it's kind of a lean, stripped down version of Hacken. I think last time I looked, it's only 4 members now. Very much kind of British prog. Still not quite as weird as some of their first 2 albums or so, which are the ones I know prog purists love them and don't love the Virus and Vector era, but I'm a little bit more of a metal guy and I like the crunchier, heavier feel of Virus, Vector and stuff. And so this has been pretty good. I've only listened to it like twice, I think, so I don't have a ton of I don't have a ton that I've listened to, but I'm enjoying it. And then the 2 others that have gotten a lot more play, Psychroptic, The Pulse of Annihilation, Australian technical death metal. They are great. I would say that this new album, it's a little bit more tighter, a little bit leaner than their 2023 album, Divine Council. That was actually the album that got me into Psychroptic, but it is great. Just intricate drums, intricate guitar. It's really good stuff. And then Protest the Hero. Protest the Hero have a new album Within. Love Protest the Hero. Been a big fan. Realistically, it was their album. Oh gosh, which was the one I got into? I think it was even before Kezia and Scurrilous. It was after Kezia, before Scurrilous, and I'm blanking on which album that was. But it was Volition was the one that really got me into them. I think that Within is a fantastic album. It is very, very good. It is a lot tighter. It's only coming in at about 30 something minutes. So it's a nice tight album of just wild, kind of crazy, chaotic post-hardcore progressive all over the place stuff. And I think that once again, Protest the Hero has pulled it off. And I have to say, if you have never, have you ever seen the Protest the Hero video for the song Clarity? I think it's the first track off Volition.
No.
So it is what made me a lifelong Protest the Hero fan. I will give you this short rundown. The video for Clarity, it has a group of Star Trek LARPers run into a group of Star Wars LARPers in a field. They get into a brawl until a group of Lord of the Ring LARPers show up and kick all their butts.
Okay. Why not?
So it's fun. It's fun. Protest the Hero's good. That's really about what I've been checking out the last little while. What about you? What you been checking out?
So, let's see. Where should I start? So I have a couple of things I want to make sure I mention. First off, I did it. I finished Long Awaited Feelings. Clocking in, I someone did the math, and it is like 2,600 pages of book. I finished it.
Holy
And guess
Moses.
and guess what? They're married. It's great. Well, they're
What's
domestic
that?
partnered. It's great. It got really exciting at the end. We figured out the metaphysical reasons why time was turned back, and it was good. It was really fun. I liked it a lot. It was too long, but I did enjoy it. But it's nice to have that done.
Okay.
I've been picking through some other stuff that's just, later books in series I've already read. Just to, pick away at things. Been reading some Magical Revolution, reading some other stuff, but I really enjoyed Long Awaited Feelings. I would definitely read other stuff by that same author. I thought it was fun. Yeah. Other things to mention. Um, I said last time that there is a lot of seasonal anime that I'm actually watching this season. So it's time to
Uh-huh.
recap. What is Eden watching this season in anime? Number one, The Ghost in the Shell is here.
Okay.
It's pretty good. Here's the thing. It looks incredible. It looks stunning. Because they did a really the thing about, and I think we talked about this when we watched Ghost in the Shell together. The thing about the comic, The Ghost in the Shell, is that it looks incredible, but Masamune Shirow is not a good writer. So it's not very well written, but it looks cool as hell. Science Saru
Okay.
is the studio that is animating this, and guess what? They just said, why don't we just make it look like the comic looks? So it looks really cool. This is a very, very different take on these characters. It's a lot goofier, like the comic is. A lot of people who are kind of anime only watchers who've maybe watched Ghost in the Shell the movie or they watched Standalone Complex, and that's kind of been their relationship with Ghost in the Shell, they're all really confused why the major is like funny and flirty and like kind of a goofball and blushes constantly throughout the first episode. That's who she is in the comic. She's funny and flirty. And so that is what they've really leaned into with this adaptation. I'm very curious to see how it
Okay.
goes because I did notice in episode 3 it felt like the budget was significantly less. A lot of the action looked a lot kind of sketchier. In fact, there is a scene in the opening action sequence of episode 3. There's a part where it like basically turns into storyboards or like loose pencils instead of finished animation. And like it does that in a
Okay.
stylistic way, like on purpose, trying to be like we're doing something cool here, but also it probably cost a fifth of what it would have cost to finish the thing. So I got to imagine that that's a part of it. So I wonder what's going to happen there. I wonder if, because that first episode looks like a cajillion bucks. So I wonder if they kind of blew a lot of the money on that first episode. Because that's happened with other shows before. Like the
Sure.
famously, the 4 episode Uzumaki adaptation. The first episode is one of the coolest things you will ever see because it just looks like they've animated Uzumaki with like a bajillion dollars. And then episodes 2 through 4 look like dog shit because they had no money left.
Uh-huh.
They spent literally 75% of the budget for the show on the first episode. And then they had to make 3 episodes with 25% of the budget. So I don't know if that's what's also happening with Ghost in the Shell. We'll see. But I'm having fun with it, and that's what counts. It's very light, it's very slight. It is not as interesting as any of the other versions of Ghost in the Shell that I have enjoyed. It's better than SAC 2045, but I would not say it's better
Okay.
than even the Arise quadrilogy. It's definitely not better than the movie, but it's a different take on things, and I'm having fun with it. Other things to mention. There is another one I'm watching called Chainsmoker Cat. You might wonder,
Okay.
what's Chainsmoker Cat about, Eden? Well, it's about social deprivation and racism in Japan. But how is it telling that story? Big titty cat girl. Sometimes you make choices with an adaptation, and that's what they've chosen to do. It's a manga I've read the first couple of volumes of. It's very gross. in funny ways, but also in like, wow, like sometimes a person is desperate. Because functionally this is an anime and a manga about addiction and the ways that it like affects your life. Because the titular chain smoker cat, Yani Neko, is absolutely like ferally addicted to cigarettes to such a degree that there is a
Uh-huh.
scene in the first episode where she is walking with her fresh pack of cigs she just bought at the corner store. She's like trying to tap one out, and six of them go flying out of the box, three of which land in dog poop on the street. And she's like, 3 second rule. I'll leave those dog poop ones there, but the other ones I'll pick up. And then she walks away, and then she comes back and picks up the ones out of the dog poop. And she's like, well, I'll just cut the poopy parts off. Like, that's the level of addiction that she is dealing with to cigarettes. But
Okay.
also, it's about social deprivation because she can't keep a job. She is like profoundly poor. There is one episode where she has like 168 yen until the next payday, 5 days later. Do you know how much 168 yen is in American dollars, Peter?
I, I don't. My guess is not very much.
It used to be the old rule of thumb for years was $1 was 100 yen, and it's worse than that now.
Oh.
168
Oh.
yen is about a buck oh five, and that is what she has to live on for 5 days.
Yeah,
So
that's rough.
profound poverty. And this is a thing that happens in Japan and that they get really uncomfortable talking about in media. There was a very famous movie that came out a few years ago, I can't think of the name of now, that is about the profoundly poor of Japan. And outside of Japan, it did really, really well. People were like, this is monumental filmmaking. But inside of Japan, the guy was like pilloried and blacklisted for having like aired the country's dirty laundry to the international audience. So that is a big. So I'm very curious to see what the reception is in Japan to this show. But it's also, like I
Sure.
said, about racism because people are really racist to the beast folks in this show. Like she being a cat girl, people objectify them and are super, super racist to them. There's only certain jobs they can have. There's only certain parts of the town they can live in. All these sorts of things. So it's a really complicated underlying thing for what is fundamentally a very gross, funny show. Like, there is a part very early on where she gets like explosive diarrhea in the very first episode, or she like pukes from her second floor balcony onto her landlord's head, and like all this sorts of stuff. Like, her little sister can't even come into her apartment because her apartment stinks so bad because she's so just disgusting. Um, but it's also funny. It's very funny, but it's very much an acquired taste. It is not a thing I would recommend everyone go and watch. It's weird, it's gross, but
Okay.
it's also very funny.
Good to know.
Other things I'm watching this season. I told you, there's a lot. There is it's a manga as well. I mean, all of these, I think, with one exception, are all adaptations of manga that I've read. There's one called A Witch's Life in Mongol, which is it's a kind of a historical fiction set in 12th century Central Asia, and is about this girl who basically learns to read in 12th century Central Asia, and therefore when the Mongols come and like sack her city, she is taken back to Mongolia with them because she can read, and therefore she can, and she speaks multiple languages, so therefore she can interpret and do like a lot of work to kind of help bridge the gaps between this expanding empire in the age of the expanding Hanate. This is Genghis Khan era stuff. Um, it's really
Sure.
cool. The thing that they did really well is the manga has a very distinct style. Tomato Soup is the name of the mangaka, and she has a very distinct kind of very large faces, very big heads, and then lots of detail in the background and very like cartoony like characters in the background. And so I wondered if that was going to make a good transfer to anime or if they were going to change the art style. But they did a really good job of kind of maintaining the style, maintaining the look and feel. while still bringing it into A, color, and B, moving action as opposed to static panels. It's a pretty cool show. I like it so far. I think it's working really well. Um, Another one worth mentioning, I Want to Love You Till Your Dying Day, is probably the best looking show of the season, because the action is just really kinetic, really exciting, and it hasn't had that drop off in like action quality that I saw in like Ghost in the Shell. Otherwise, Ghost in the Shell might take it for the best looking show, but I Want to Love You Till Your Dying Day has been like consistent, and it is about a bunch of kids who are in a school where they have to learn to become magic soldiers to go fight baddies. It's never clear. I'm 8 volumes into this manga. It's never clear who the bad guys are, why they're fighting the bad guys, but they send the children off to die, basically, in war. Um, but
Okay.
there's one particular girl who can't seem to die. No matter how badly she's injured, no matter how bad things get for her, she can always heal. So she is like their secret weapon, essentially. But she's also just like a young girl. Even though she's been functionally alive for decades, they think, she's just like in this state of like girlhood. And so it is about her and her roommate as they like get closer, and the roommate doesn't want to have to go to war, but she takes care of Mimi, who is her roommate, who has to keep going out and coming back, dismembered, uh or basically on death's door. And it's dark, it's very moody, it's very serious, but it's got a lot of style to it. And it is really a beautiful comic about like finding peace and joy in the face of unstoppable terror. And they're doing a really good job of making that transition to the show. So I've been really, really impressed with that one. It might come away as my favorite of the season. We'll see how some of these others shake out. And then the other one I would want to mention is the one that I meant that I said is an anime original. It's not based on a manga or anything, and that is called Goodbye Laura, which is basically a retelling of The Little Mermaid. Except, what if things didn't go well back in the 17th, 18th century, and then she was reincarnated again in 2020's Japan on this little island, and
Okay.
she's trying to find her true love, and find a place for herself on this island. And then there's this other kid who takes her in, and their budding friendship is kind of the nucleus of this story as this mermaid tries to adjust to life on land. And it's really kind of quiet and heartfelt, and just sincere in a way I didn't expect it to be. And I'm really liking Goodbye Laura as well. It's quite good. Um, all right, the
Nice.
last thing I want to mention. I just Here's the thing. Every time I travel, I like to go to comic shops because I work at a comic shop. I like comics a lot. And I just like, when you're out and about, you want to try some new places. Downtown Providence
Sure.
has 2 comic shops in them. So I'm like, great, 2 different comic shops to go to, a literal bumper crop. This is great. So I go to the mall the other day. I go up to Newbury Comics. Peter, when I tell you this is not actually a comic shop, even though the sign says comics, I was so sad. They had
That's terrible.
they had 4 times as many Funko Pops as they had comics in the
Uh,
comic shop. They had more
that's
they had more physical releases of K-pop CDs than they had comics in the comic shop.
yeah,
I
that's a
was
tragedy.
I was so depressed. There were so many blind boxes. Listen, there's so many blind boxes all over that mall. I walked around that mall. There were 5 different storefronts with different names, just selling blind boxes. That's all they do. That's the whole business model, is selling blind box toys. 5 different stores in a mall. That's
That's
buck
wild.
wild. That's buck wild. Anyway, Newbury Comics was a total bust. I felt like a crazy person walking through that place because I was like, "How dare you!" Like, and then the comics weren't even all new. There was obviously no back issues, no like backlist stuff. They had one bookshelf of like collected like graphic novels. It was Absolute Batman and Invincible, and that was like it. Um, they had more dungeon crawler Carl books than they had comics, for God's sake. And then again, no back issues, but of the new comics that they had the Thundercats Valentine Special still out. That's not new. It's from February. Also, why do you
It's
have
not Valentine's
why do you
anymore.
have the Thundercats Valentine Special? Do you know what people buy, or do you know what people don't buy? The Thundercats comics, because they suck and look bad. We stopped buying the Thundercat
There you
comics
go.
because we couldn't move them. Because who cares about the Thundercats in 2026? I'll tell you who. It's like the two
True.
50-year-old men who still have it on their pulls at my comic shop. We don't get it for anyone else. Like, we don't order it to hang it up in the store for people to browse and buy. We order it for the two fools who still buy Thundercats. It's fine. But then I'm like, okay, there's another one. It's fine. There's another one. It's called East Bay Comics. So another day, I walk on over there and I walk in and I realize disappointment from the exact opposite end of things. All they have is
Okay.
back issues, and they are not
Oh.
organized.
Oh my.
Here is the many, many long boxes that say Marvel on them. Here is the many, many long boxes that say DC on them. Here is the many, many long boxes that say Independent on them. They're not organized. I I felt like a crazy person trying to just find stuff. And then again, it was mostly just like vintage chatarra, vintage garbage. Like, there was not a whole lot. There still wasn't that many comics in a store called East Bay Comics. It was mostly like old toys and like vintage. Like, it felt like I was in a vintage shop that just had more comics than most vintage shops do. And then again, they were not organized. They were not easily like navigable. And so I picked through a few boxes just trying to find anything that I was interested in. It's not like I'm that, I mean, I'm sort of picky. I have most everything by DC and Marvel I would ever want, I already own. So most of what I look
Sure.
for is like weirder indie stuff. I really like the 80s, like black and white indie explosion comics. I really like some of the early 90s, like, again, that the tail end of the indie explosion when they tried to go color and then it kind of failed and every single one of those companies went bankrupt. That's my sweet spot. I want to buy those kinds of comics. I have 900 comics on my wish list that I can like scroll through and look for
Wow.
stuff. Like, I have a lot of stuff that I would like. I didn't find a single thing. I didn't find a single thing. So what it did, and this is what happens almost every time I go to a comic shop. 95% of the time, 5% of the time, I walk in and I say, oh, that's a really good idea. We should try doing that at our shop. 95% of the time, I walk in and then I go, we're better than everyone else. We just are. We're
There you
just
go.
better. We're just better at this than everyone, which is both good and sad because I want other shops to also be good. if you wanted
Yeah.
if you wanted to buy comics in this town, you gotta go somewhere else. Neither of these two are actually serving you if you want to like become a regular comics reader, and that's kind of a bummer.
It is. It is.
But what are you gonna do? Anyway, should we move on to the main event, Peter?
Let's do it. Let's talk about this.
All right, I'm very curious to see what you have to say about it. This time, dear listeners, is the thing that we delayed on last time. We played episode 0 of a video game called Of the Devil. Um, Before we get into our impressions on it, and especially before we get into a spoiler zone, because we're going to have to talk about spoilers, just to give a little bit of background on what this is kind of a cyberpunk, noir kind of detective-y game. If you listeners have ever played an Ace Attorney game, um, that's kind of what it is. It's a Phoenix Wright game where you are. This one you didn't end up in the courtroom. You did the verbal sparring in the police station, but I know in further episodes you are in the courtroom, um, like just like Phoenix Wright. But you're basically, objecting to what your opponents are saying. You are interjecting your own ideas using the clues that you have gathered as you have looked at the crime scene, recordings, talked to the police officers, talked to the suspect, and just kind of, have picked your way through this material, then you are given the opportunity to prove that you paid attention, prove that you were able to solve why this person didn't do this, because you are a defense attorney. You are trying to get your client off for this murder because they believe your client is the heartbreak killer who has killed 6 women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is kind of the premise of the game. So before we get into like a breakdown of what it is in the spoiler section, I wanted to just ask Peter. I know that you've played one other kind of visual novelty game at my behest when we played Heaven Will Be Mine a couple of years ago at this point. This is kind of a different
Yep.
take on the visual novel style game. It's a little more interactive on your part because you've got to be paying attention. You got to be looking for clues. How'd you find this? What did you think?
I thought it was really fun. I liked it quite a bit. It took a little bit for me to get into playing it, not because of it though, just because just things have been busy, lots going on lately. But
Sure.
once I finally sat down and just really started playing, I thought it was really interesting. I like first of all, it oozes style. I
It's
mean,
very
the
stylish.
visuals, the music, it's extremely stylish. So it pulls you in with that. But I appreciated that it wasn't too hard by any
No,
stretch of the imagination, but you did have to be paying attention or be willing to go back and look again at some of the items, the evidence, the reports, and think a little bit. Like again, it wasn't hard. I'm not like some expert at any of these kinds of games, but I managed to get it. When I finished, it was like, oh, congratulations, you got whatever 33, you got the highest score possible. You
there
can
you
use
go.
it, blah blah blah. So but it does make you think a little bit.
For
Again,
sure.
challenging enough to engage you, make sure that you're paying attention and that you've gone back and thought about things, and then that you're looking at each time you have that opportunity to present some piece of evidence or to refute something that the cops are saying, you do have to think about, okay, they're saying this and this and this, and then looking at what your options are. And I had to think about it a little bit and go, okay, I think this fits here because of X, Y, or Z.
Sure.
So I did. I thought it was really cool. I've already bought episodes 1 and 2. So what did you think?
I did the same thing. I bought the whole thing all at once because I was just really impressed with it. I kind of knew I was going to like it going in. Phoenix Wright games are one of those like kind of holes in my video game knowledge that I've been meaning to fill for years. But for years and years, they were just on Nintendo systems. So I couldn't really play them as a person who wasn't a Nintendo person. But they're all on Steam now.
Yep.
I see them every time they're on sale. Every time Capcom has a sale, I think, is it time to buy the Great Ace Attorney? And then I don't do it. But I might after this. I might finally take the plunge because I had a really good time. Like you said, I liked that the mechanics were the mechanics were there and that they worked. I thought that it was interesting the way that it frames it all as sort of like like a betting sort of thing. Like you have your cards, your opponent
Yeah.
has their cards, you're earning credits or you're losing credits. And then I really liked the mechanic where sometimes you had to decide, did you want to hold or did you want to raise? AKA, did you want to acquiesce to what the police officer was saying or did you want to kind of push back? Because you had to make, like,
Uh-huh.
there were times when it was appropriate to maybe push back, and there were times where it might not have been, and it might have actually hurt your case if you pushed at that moment. And there might have been times when you wanted to say, okay, well, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to let her say what she needs to say and just be like, oh, interesting, interesting. Even though intellectually I understand why she's wrong, this is not the time to do it. There's another time later where it's
Yes.
time to punch through with my evidence and prove her wrong.
Yep. I
But
agree.
and I
I thought
think
it was
that
well done.
and I think that you're exactly right in that you can tell that this is not a big budget thing. You can tell this is made by a few very passionate people doing very cool work. The character design is kind of grungy and weird, with the exception of Morgan, the main character, who is very put together, very cool looking. Everyone else just kind of looks gross. And I think that's
Yep.
on purpose because
That's true.
Morgan truly sets herself apart from the others. We'll talk about why when we get to the spoiler section. Um, but I think they do a lot with very little here, and I'm really impressed with how well they did that. even up to include like just changing the hues on the sprites when they're feeling certain emotions or when they want to really highlight
Yeah.
certain things. Um, it just was a really effective use of very limited tool sets to really be evocative. I felt like the game's evocative as hell. I think you're exactly right that the soundtrack's very cool, very just kind of grungy, cyberpunky, kind of industrial feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it really sells a feel. Like sometimes, especially I feel like recently, a lot of the cyberpunk stuff that I see doesn't feel very cyberpunky because it feels a little too clean, and a little too
Sure.
like buttoned up, which like parts of it are. Arasaka Tower is clean and buttoned up. When you go to meet Hanako at Embers in Cyberpunk 2077, she's clean, she's buttoned up, but you aren't. And this kind of felt like the
Yeah.
inversion of that, where the only person who's clean and buttoned up is your protagonist, Morgan, and everyone else feels like they're in the cyberpunk slums, except for this extremely stylish defense attorney. Uh, so, should we get into the
Mm-hmm.
spoiler section, Peter?
I think we should. Let's get into the spoiler section.
All right. So again, these are only going to be spoilers for episode 0 because that's the only part we've played. Episodes 1 and 2 are out. Episode 3 is supposed to be out later this fall. And I think the plan is 5 episodes total, if I remember correctly, to tell the whole
That's
story.
what I had seen
Um,
as well.
but anyway, episode 0 opens on Morgan, the protagonist, getting a call at like 3 or 4 a.m. to go. She's been summoned. She's a defense attorney. There's a call out for potential defense attorneys, for the public defenders. She takes it. She goes. She finds out that there's this guy. His name is Carlos. They believe that he has killed his girlfriend, but also his girlfriend was killed with an untagged antique revolver that has also been used in 5 other murders. Every single one of them was a young brunette woman shot through the heart. And this was the 6th young brunette woman shot through the heart. So they've started calling this serial killer the Heartbreak Killer because it is one shot, one kill with this untraceable gun. Um, and Morgan very quickly realizes that Carlos is not the killer. There's no way Carlos could have done this, for a lot of different reasons. Number one, he has a prosthetic arm that's been broken, so he's been using a replacement prosthetic arm. Number two, he's far too, worked up emotionally about this. Whereas, that doesn't have the level of precision and clinical detachment that it would take to do what the Heartbreak Killer has done. All of the evidence is just very
Yep.
circumstantial and flimsy. Morgan works her way through all of the evidence, and then presents her case to the detectives and is able to basically show, see, it's not Carlos. Here's all the reasons why your evidence, you thought you had an
You got
ironclad
the
case.
wrong
You
guy.
got the wrong guy. And then you realize why Morgan is so sure they got the wrong guy. Peter, why is Morgan so sure they got the wrong guy?
Morgan instantly knew that they had the wrong guy the second she walked through the door, because Morgan was waiting up to get the call for this, because Morgan is the murderer.
Morgan is the serial killer. And so she knows he didn't
Yes.
do it because
Yes,
she did
he
it.
is.
And
Because
so
she did it.
and so that is a very interesting wrinkle that you don't get in the Phoenix Wright games. You know who I don't think is the serial killer? Phoenix Wright.
I don't think Phoenix Wright is the killer. I don't think
But,
he's the
but
criminal in any
Morgan
of the
is.
episodes.
She's the serial killer. And she's done a lot more than just those
Yeah.
6 people with this one gun. She's like, I change my
Oh,
MO
yeah.
every so often. You gotta keep it fresh. You
Yeah.
gotta keep it real. You gotta keep it fun. And so then it ends very like we find out Morgan is the Heartbreak Killer. And I'm like, okay, this must be done. But then there was another 5 or 10 minutes where you meet the DA,
Yep.
who's a little too smart and a little too good at her job. And suddenly Morgan is like, oh shit. If anyone's going to be able to catch me, it's this district attorney.
It's this assistant DA.
Because
And,
she's smart and
it gives you this.
No, go ahead.
To say, it gives you a really nice kind of setup where basically this assistant DA lays all this out, and she's like, basically, I know a lot about her or about the killer, but I'm not going to be able to catch the killer until I get more kills and more evidence and
Uh-huh.
more opportunity to look into it. So
Mhm.
basically sets up this thing where it kind of looks like Morgan is in a position where the only way she doesn't get caught is if she stops. At least that's kind of how it sets it up at the
Yeah,
end of episode 0.
but will she be able to stop?
Oh, I don't believe so at all.
Absolutely not. This is a cold-hearted, like, psychopathic serial killer. Uh, that's who she is, and that's who she'll stay. So I'm sure that that is going to get very complicated. Um, yeah, I thought this game was really fun. I thought that, the way I I knew that that twist was coming. Did you have any inkling that that twist might be coming?
I felt like there was something weird, but I didn't know anything. I hadn't looked into it, so I didn't know anything about this being
Well,
the twist.
there's every so often, especially when Morgan is doing her interviews with Carlos, there are these scenes where like this terrible rumbling sound will occur and like it changes where the words are on the screen. They're not in a normal text box. It like zooms in on Morgan's eyes or things like or Morgan's hair
Uh-huh.
and it was always a little disconcerting. And so that's you're like something's off
Yeah.
here. And it's because those are
Something's
all
not
these
right.
premonitions of like, well, of course Morgan knows what's actually going on here because she's the one who did these killings. Um, but yeah,
Uh-huh.
I knew it was coming, so that was spoiled for me. But I don't feel like it ruined my experience with the game at all. Even though I knew that twist
I
was
don't think
there,
so. I don't think it would.
because I still had the fun of being like, well, how do you get yourself out of this? Like, how do you get away again, Mister So and So? Like, you got to figure out how to weave your way, rhetorically past these police officers who wouldn't have brought a case if they didn't feel like they could sink it. Because that's a big thing that they establish, is that they only bring cases. It's very like kind of Japanese justice system coded. You only bring a case if you are like 99.9% sure you can sink it. Unlike the American justice
Yeah.
system, the American legal system, where there are a lot of times where they just bring spurious charges or really flimsy charges, um, because there's not that cultural expectation that, well, if you brought charges, it has to be 100% true. It has to be 100% ironclad. But in this cyberpunk dystopia, that seems to be where they're at, which is why it's so interesting that Morgan is able to get off. But also why, as you're playing the game, when the DA comes in and she's like, oh, I had already figured out. As soon as they sent me the file, I was like, well, of course this guy didn't do it. Because boom, 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 boom. And then she lists off everything that you had used to refute the police 10 minutes earlier.
And
And he
even a
just
few things that you hadn't.
yeah, a couple of things you didn't even think about. Like she is
Yeah.
clearly a step or two ahead of you even. You just haven't
Uh-huh.
made a big enough mistake that she can catch you yet. So I'm very curious to see where this goes in episodes 1 and 2. I am really eager to play more of it. Cuz I felt really sucked into it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like I say, I got episodes 1 and 2, and I look forward to checking them out because it was very interesting, super stylish, and I thought really well done. And at the same time, look, I have no problem playing the great big games from big studios, but I love to find something from a small team and support it. Like just encourage this kind of stuff. That's one of, and I think we kind of talked about this a while, like probably a couple years ago,
Uh-huh.
but things like the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, honestly, even the Switch, but things like these smaller, more affordable, portable, handheld gaming devices that make gaming more accessible to more people have allowed this type of game to be feasible again. And I
Mhm.
love that. I love that we can get interesting, unique, very stylish, polished, well made,
Yeah.
but not, a 60-hour AAA thing that costs, $3 billion dollars or however the fuck much GTA 6 is going to end up being when they finally release it. Like like, I love that we have these kinds of games and that
Yeah.
we can support them, we can encourage it, we can enjoy that. And that they're not the microtransaction-y bullshit that you get on a phone.
I 100% agree. I think that this is a well, and it's gaming is in such dire straits right now. You know, if you look at the state
Yeah,
of the industry, you can't afford RAM anymore, which means you can't afford to build your own PC, which means, they're having to raise the price on all of the consoles. So people are getting priced out of the consoles. Um, it costs too much to develop games, as you said. GTA is going to be $3 billion. I recently saw a thing talking about how expensive Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was, and it was like hundreds of millions of dollars. And then they're like, and that's one third of Final Fantasy VII, which they made in
yeah,
14 months for a 7-digit amount.
yeah,
And it's just, and honestly, it's a better game. Like, I played Final Fantasy VII. I've played Final Fantasy VII Remake. I haven't played Rebirth, but like, Final Fantasy VII was a great game. You didn't need to remake it for a cajillion dollars. And, they make money on it. I know what they're doing, but, the game existed back when games didn't have to be so big and didn't have to be so expensive and didn't have to focus so much on, visual fidelity and making sure that Tifa's boobs bounce with correct, physics engines. Like, that's not okay. I hear about Red Dead Redemption 2 and they're like, the horse ball technology. And I was like, you know what you didn't need to do, guys? Put physics in the testicles of the horses in your stupid cowboy
right,
game. And it
right.
feels so wasteful. And then nothing sells as much as they want it to because all of these companies are owned by these vulture capitalists who then turn around and rip everything apart as soon as they don't make $10 bajillion in the first 2 days of sales, Like, so many layoffs.
Yeah,
Bungie has been gutted to the bone. So many of the Microsoft studios have fallen apart. Like, for a while there, Microsoft was buying so many cool indie studios and being like, here's some money, make some cool games. And then as soon as the rubber met the road, they were all out. Everyone was laid off, or they were closing entire companies and shuttering entire games in like 2 weeks. And it's just the bigger, larger industry of video gaming is in real dire straits right now, which is why it is so important to find things like this and support them, because that
yeah,
way stuff still gets made. We have joked about it before, but it remains true. The meme of Sonic the Hedgehog saying, I want shorter games with worse graphics made by people getting paid more money to work less is true. That's how I
uh-huh.
feel. I want shorter games with worse graphics made by people getting paid more to work less. And the only way that happens is if I don't spend $100 on GTA 6 and I spend that $100 on 5 to 10 indie games. You know?
Yeah, and I will fully admit that I do still like those big games sometimes.
I mean, we both
I
talked
I'll
about how fucking good Cyberpunk 2077 is, and that game cost $8
yeah,
cajillion and took 4 years after it came out before it was good.
but that's the thing, is that there now exists this space for these smaller games and these smaller teams, that the games are hopefully being made in a more humane setting,
Yeah,
and they're allowing people to tell stories that otherwise wouldn't get made, and that's something to be celebrated. And we as the consumers need to say, if this matters to us, we need to support it. And so again, that's why I was like, yeah, no question. I'm buying episodes 1 and 2.
yeah.
Just get them both. I'm
Hmm.
not waiting to play episode 1 to see episode 2. Let's just get them both. It was honestly, it's the same reason I bought Subnautica 2. It's because there was that whole kerfuffle about, it's selling enough and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, hey, if more people buy Subnautica 2, does that somehow stick a fork in the quasi, like you said, vulture capital that bought the? Yes, it did. So great. I'm going to buy it and
Yeah.
see. It's just, yeah, it was cool. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad you suggested it. And this is the kind of stuff where this is the stuff I want to be supporting more than the really big things.
Hell yeah. No, I'm 100% with you. And sometimes even a little bigger than this. Like Power Wash Simulator is
Yeah.
bigger, more involved than this. But I bought both those games. I bought all their DLC. I'm midway through cleaning an ad at right now, baby. Because
Heck yes.
The Star Wars DLC for Power Wash Simulator 2 came out last week. So I cleaned Owen and Baru's house. I cleaned the Mos Eisley Cantina. I was captured by the Empire, and now I'm cleaning an AT-AT on the frozen tundra of Hoth. It's great. But you gotta support these people. If you like the game, you gotta buy the
Yeah,
game. And that's just kind of what
that's
it
true.
is. And I'd much rather that money go to a small team doing cool stuff.
Yep, I agree.
Well, I think we should wrap there. It's a little shorter than usual, but between travel and everything, I think that's okay. Um, Thank you all for
I think that's
listening.
totally fine.
As always, you can leave us reviews, you can leave us stars, helps people find us, it helps get us higher in the algorithm. If you have any questions or comments, you can always leave us a message at feedback@themiddleofculture.com. And otherwise, we'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new episode.
Bye.